In the world of celebrity, the spotlight has never been a shield. Behind the chart-topping hits, seven-figure deals, and sold-out arenas lie dark corners where fame offers no protection at all, where jealousy festers, grudges simmer, and anger ends lives with a blade or a bullet. No one ever expects black icons, adored by millions and larger than life, to be taken out over something so small, a careless argument, a few reckless words, or a petty online feud that spiraled out of control. The reasons may differ, but the truth remains the same. Every one of these murders was fueled by rage, resentment, and wounded pride. The stories you're about to hear make that reality painfully clear. These 19 murdered black stars stand as a brutal reminder: fame, power, and money can never buy real safety. Jam Master Jay. Jam Master Jay. A legend whose run was cut short by ice-cold gunfire. His name was spoken with nothing but respect, no hype, no exaggeration. A true genius behind the turntables, a visionary DJ and producer, the backbone of Run DMC. He helped blow hip-hop wide open, lifting raw street sounds straight to the top of the charts and changing how the entire world saw rap music. Jay was hip-hop royalty, tough, fearless, always pushing the culture forward. But one night the lights went out for good. The stage faded into darkness, where trust was betrayed and brotherhood went up in flames. Around 2002, Jay got pulled into a dangerous cocaine deal, moving nearly 10 kilos from the Midwest to Maryland, money big enough to build an entirely new music empire if it paid off. He brought in two men close to him, Ronald Washington, who'd been around for years, and Carl Jordan Jr., who looked at Jay like a father. When Washington got into a dispute with a supplier, Jay pushed him aside to keep the deal alive. That single decision cut deep. Washington's pride took the hit, and the anger burned quietly, like coals waiting for air. Jordan, bound by loyalty and street code, began leaning toward Washington. That's when the story stopped being about business and turned into something fueled by resentment and hate. October 30th, 2002. Nighttime. The 24/7 studio in Jamaica, Queens, became Jam Master Jay's final stage. He was laid back on the couch, talking business, flipping through paperwork like it was any other night. A .380 rested nearby, proof he sensed trouble on the horizon. Around 7 p.m., the fire exit door burst open. Washington and Jordan walked in, cold and silent, like ghosts who'd been waiting for this moment. One heartbeat of silence. Then gunfire. Jordan pulled the trigger. The bullet struck Jay in the head. Washington shot a witness in the leg to clear their escape. It was over in seconds, no struggle, no chance to fight back. Jam Master Jay died inside the empire he built, surrounded by the legacy of classic records and cultural revolutions. 22 years later, in 2024, both Washington and Jordan were sentenced to life in prison. A bond that once felt sacred, built on music, trust, and shared dreams, ended behind bars forever. Jam Master Jay will always be remembered as a legend. But behind the shine and the glory is a tragic ending no one ever wanted to see. An icon taken out by the very people who once walked the same road beside him. Medgar Evers. Medgar Evers, a civil rights icon gunned down in his own driveway on a night thick with hate. Evers was the fearless face of the movement in Mississippi, serving as the NAACP's field secretary and leading dangerous black voter registration drives in the heart of Jim Crow country. One merchant told me he didn't need our business, Evers said. Then let's not trade there. Let Capitol Street feel the economic pinch. He worked the front lines of the Emmett Till murder investigation, pushed school desegregation, and became a living symbol, one that made racists tremble and gave allies hope. But that spotlight slammed into a wall of pure hatred. By the late 1950s, Medgar Evers' name was already on the Klan's kill list. Byron de la Beckwith, a hardcore white supremacist, saw him as a threat that had to be erased. Fueled by venom and blind loyalty to the old order, Beckwith believed murder was patriotism. Every move Evers made, every voter drive, every court case, was gasoline on a short fuse. On June 12, 1963, late at night, just hours after President Kennedy went on television to back the Civil Rights Act, Evers left a long NAACP meeting and drove home to Jackson, exhausted, but unbroken. He carried a shirt that read, "Jim Crow must go. No retreat. No surrender." Inside the house, his wife Merle and their 3 children were waiting. The night felt calm, but Beckwith was hiding in the shadows, behind honeysuckle bushes 150 feet away, cradling a high-powered rifle, waiting for the perfect moment. Evers stepped out of his car. No warning, no guard up, unaware death was aiming from the dark. One shot shattered the silence. The bullet ripped through his back, tore into his heart and lungs, and dropped him at the foot of his own home, the one place that should have been safe. Neighbors rushed out. An ambulance sped away. 50 minutes later, doctors pronounced him dead. Beckwith was arrested, but twice in 1964, all-white juries let him walk free. He lived for decades boasting about it as if murder were a medal. Not until 1994 did new evidence finally put him behind bars. He died in prison in 2001. Too late for true justice, but not too late for history. One bullet stole a civil rights hero's life, but it could never extinguish the fire Medgar Evers lit. Malcolm X. Malcolm X. A black revolutionary gunned down in front of a live audience. He was one of the most electrifying voices ever to rise from the Nation of Islam. When Malcolm stepped onto a stage, it felt like history itself was holding its breath. His words polled in thousands, shaking America with fearless speeches that confronted racism and injustice head-on. But that same fame dragged him straight into a fatal collision. Malcolm had been Elijah Muhammad's brightest disciple, until he discovered the leader was secretly involved with young women inside the organization. Malcolm exposed the truth publicly and was silenced, banned from speaking for 90 days. "I never left the Muslim movement," Malcolm later said. "They put me out because of what I knew. And what I knew came from Mr. Muhammad's own son." Instead of backing down, Malcolm broke away in 1964. After his pilgrimage to Mecca, he converted to Sunni Islam and founded the Organization of Afro-American Unity, determined to rebuild the black struggle on new terms. He openly called Elijah Muhammad a fraud. From that moment on, the hatred was no longer whispered, it was open and vicious. Talmadge Hayer, Norman 3X Butler, Thomas 15X Johnson, and other former followers branded Malcolm a traitor. In their eyes, he had stolen Elijah's power. And to them, eliminating Malcolm felt justified. The boss never gave a direct command, but the signals were clear enough to ignite the fuse. Malcolm knew he was being watched. He knew danger was closing in. Still, he refused to stop. He believed his mission was righteous. February 21, 1965. The Audubon Ballroom. Nearly 400 people packed the room. The speakers boomed. The lights burned hot. Tension hung heavy in the air. Minutes after Malcolm stepped onto the stage, a shout cut through the crowd. Chaos exploded. Heads turned. Panic surged. Then 3 men charged forward. Hayer fired the shotgun. Malcolm collapsed instantly. Butler and Johnson followed, unloading their weapons. Nearly 15 bullets tore into his body. It was over in seconds, fast, brutal, final. Malcolm X was dead at just 39 years old. The shooters were arrested on the spot. Hayer received 40 years. Butler and Johnson were sentenced to life. But decades later, in 2021, newly revealed FBI files cleared Butler and Johnson of all charges. A lifetime of struggle ended on a stage, but Malcolm's voice never died. It still crashes through history like thunder after a storm. But unrelenting. Impossible to ignore. Jackie Wilson. Jackie Wilson. An R&B legend. A superstar brought down by jealousy, bullets, and a slow, painful fade. For more than 2 decades, Jackie Wilson lit up stages with a 4-octave voice and explosive, acrobatic performances. Lonely Teardrops turned him into an R&B icon. Sold-out arenas. Screaming fans. Spotlights chasing him from city to city. He lived the dream, until the dream cracked wide open. Behind the glamour was a messy love triangle waiting to explode. Jackie had once been deeply involved with Juanita Jones. Then he left her behind and married Harlene Harris. To Juanita, it felt like betrayal. like everything she had given him had been erased overnight. The jealousy didn't fade, it smoldered. Year after year, it burned hotter as she watched Jackie rise higher, surrounded by other women, while she was left in the shadows. Love twisted into obsession. Obsession turned into revenge. On September 2, 1961, inside a Manhattan apartment, Jackie's fate was sealed. He had just come home, believing things were finally calm. But Juanita was waiting. A .22 caliber pistol in her hand. 3 shots shattered the silence and the shine of a superstar. Jackie collapsed. Bullets ripped through his chest and stomach. A kidney destroyed. His spine severely damaged. Endless surgery followed. He survived, but his body never recovered, and neither did his career. That shooting haunted him like a lifelong curse. His health steadily declined. Then in 1975, during a live performance, his heart suddenly stopped. He collapsed on stage. Doctors brought him back, but Jackie slipped into a coma that lasted 8 agonizing years. The fame, the applause, the glory, now just distant echoes. On January 21, 1984, Jackie Wilson finally passed away from pneumonia, complications rooted in the gunshot wounds that had never truly healed. Juanita was arrested and convicted, but released early after claiming self-defense. The case was closed, but the damage was irreversible. A musical genius. A voice for the ages. Brought to an end by blind jealousy, and a tragedy that never let go. Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King. A shocking end born from political fury and racial hatred. Martin Luther King Jr. stood as the greatest symbol of the American civil rights movement, leading nonviolent protests that reshaped a nation. He ignited change in Montgomery with the bus boycott, then stunned the world with the "I Have a Dream" speech in Washington, becoming the living face of freedom and equality. No one imagined his death would come like a blade sharpened in silence for years, waiting in the dark corners of bigotry. James Earl Ray, a white extremist consumed by hate, believed King was destroying what he called the natural order. Ray wasn't angry only about civil rights. King's outspoken opposition to the Vietnam War felt like a direct threat to everything he believed. By 1968, Ray had followed King across state lines with a single obsession: stop the road King was building for Black America. On April 4, 1968, the Lorraine Motel felt calm, almost ordinary. King stood on the balcony, laughing and talking with those supporting the sanitation workers' strike, relaxed, unaware a rifle scope was locked on him. At 6:01 p.m., Ray fired. One bullet tore through King's jaw and spine. It was instant, merciless, and unreal. King collapsed. Friends rushed him to St. Joseph's Hospital. At 7:05 p.m., Martin Luther King Jr. was pronounced dead, leaving behind a gaping wound in the fight for human rights. Ray fled, clutching the twisted belief that he had saved white America. He jumped from state to state, reached London, and was captured on June 8, 1968. He pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty, then later claimed innocence. Still, the FBI concluded it was a politically and racially motivated assassination. Decades later, conspiracy theories refused to fade. Many believe Ray did not act alone. And that is why this story never truly rests, an open wound in American history that still bleeds. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye. A breathtaking rise, and a devastating end decades in the making. Marvin Gaye didn't just sing soul music, he owned it. From a harsh, broken childhood, he climbed to the top of American culture, stopping the nation cold with "I Heard It Through the Grapevine," standing shoulder to shoulder with the giants of R&B. His career was brilliant, legendary. But beneath the success, a slow-burning fire had never gone out, one that lived in the same house where he was raised. The tension between Marvin and his father, Marvin Gaye Sr., stretched year after year like a rubber band pulled too tight. His father was an apostolic preacher, short-tempered, rigid, convinced secular music was sinful. Marvin grew up under beatings, suffocating church rules, and constant judgment. Every scar piled onto another, forming a canyon of unresolved pain. Even fame couldn't free him. Marvin added the to his last name just to step out of his father's shadow. Success only deepened the divide. To his father, Marvin wasn't a genius. He was a fallen man, corrupted by money, fame, drugs, and desire. In early 1984, Marvin moved back to Los Angeles to care for his mother after a tour. The house that should have brought peace became the stage for his final act. Days before his 45th birthday, the arguments never stopped. Decades of resentment were boiling over. On the afternoon of April 1, 1984, just one day before his birthday, it exploded. What began as an argument over missing insurance papers spiraled into accusations about morals, drugs, and the life Marvin lived. When Marvin stepped in to stop his father from hitting his mother, Alberta, he crossed a line that had never been crossed before. He charged, shoved his father into the hallway, and swung. In that house, there was one unspoken rule: no one ever touched the father. That day, the rule shattered, and tragedy followed. Marvin Gaye Sr. was 70 years old, weakened by a brain tumor, but his pride was still unbroken. He reached for a .38 revolver, the same gun his son had given him for protection. 3 shots rang out at close range. Marvin Gaye collapsed in the living room. No screams, no second chance. Just silence, broken only by his mother's wails, while his father stood trembling over the blood of the son he had just killed. He was arrested, later given probation, claiming self-defense. But no sentence can soften the cruelty of that ending. A legend of love, passion, and soul, shot by his own father, inside the home that raised him. That wound remains open, echoing through music history, a tragedy no song can ever heal. Tupac Shakur. Tupac Shakur. A straight-up execution under the neon lights of Las Vegas, born from a blood-soaked feud. Tupac was America's rap icon, rising from the streets to blinding fame, a poet with a warrior's edge. Signed to death row, he dropped "Hit 'em Up" like a formal declaration of war, a frontline general in the East Coast, West Coast battle. All fire, no retreat. No one believed a music war would spill real blood, until September 7, 1996. That night, after the Tyson fight at the MGM Grand, Tupac and Suge Knight jumped Orlando Anderson in the lobby over a stolen death row chain. In the gang world, that was public humiliation. And honor, once stained, demands payback. Revenge took shape fast, waiting for its moment. Tupac rolled out in a black BMW, Suge at the wheel, a convoy trailing behind. The air was thick with tension. Across town, Orlando Anderson and his crew rode in a white Cadillac, led by his uncle, Kef D. They weren't letting that beating slide. Vegas lights turned into a stage for tragedy. Around 11:15 p.m. at Flamingo and Koval, the cars pulled up side by side. The Cadillac window dropped. Anderson sat in the back seat, Glock .40 raised. No warning. Rapid fire. 4 bullets tore through Tupac. Suge was hit by flying glass but kept driving. Sirens screamed. Chaos ripped through the night. Tupac lay motionless, eyes open, slipping away. University Medical Center. 6 days on life support. A chest full of blood, lungs collapsing. September 13, 1996, Tupac was gone at 25. A life at its peak, stopped cold by bullets and betrayal. Anderson walked free, only to die in another shooting 2 years later. Kef D was finally locked up in 2023. The threads all connect, like that old war never truly ended. Tupac lives forever as a legend, but that Vegas night built a wall he would never climb past in rap history. The Notorious B.I.G. The Notorious B.I.G. ambushed in the heart of Los Angeles during the deadly East Coast-West Coast War. Biggie Smalls. The East Coast King. A hip-hop icon soaked in street truth and raw charisma. Juicy and Big Papa lifted him from the corners of Brooklyn straight to the top of the charts. His voice became the sound of a generation, a towering rival to the West Coast giants. Then came March 9, 1997. Just months after Tupac's murder, hip-hop was still burning with tension, East versus West, no ceasefire. Suge Knight, convinced Biggie and Puff Daddy were behind Tupac's death, wanted revenge and total control of Death Row's legacy. That night, Biggie left the Soul Train Awards after-party at the Peterson Automotive Museum. He rode shotgun in a GMC Suburban, part of a convoy rolling through LA, slipping through red lights. The streets were quiet. Neon reflections danced on the windows. Everything looked normal, but death was already close. At the intersection of Wilshire and Fairfax, a black Chevy Impala SS pulled alongside. From the back seat, a .45 ACP erupted, 4 shots fired through the glass. Every bullet found its mark. Thunder cracked the night. Glass shattered. The convoy exploded into chaos. Puff Daddy escaped with cuts from flying shards, but Biggie slumped forward instantly, never knowing what hit him. An ambulance rushed him to Cedars-Sinai, but it was too late. At 1 a.m., the Notorious B.I.G. was pronounced dead. He was only 24 years old. His murder sent shockwaves through hip-hop, exposing just how deep the hatred and violence had run. Wardell Poochie Faust is widely suspected as the shooter, but no one was ever charged. The case remains unsolved, a dark stain on hip-hop history. On those LA streets, Biggie Smalls was taken from the world, leaving behind an East Coast legend, and a war whose grudges never truly died. Proof. How a gambling beef turned a D12 legend into an instant victim. Born Deshaun Holton, he was a core member of D12, Eminem's Ride or Die on Detroit stages. Famous for razor-sharp battle skills, unshakable confidence, and total crowd control, Proof was Detroit hip-hop royalty. His verses carried real weight and raw emotion, earning respect from fans and the underground alike. Then, on the night of April 11, 2006, everything flipped, from hype to horror, inside the CCC Club on 8 Mile. Proof was shooting pool with friends when an argument over bets with Keith Bender exploded. Bender, bitter over lost cash and feeling disrespected, wanted to make a point. The air tightened. Words turned to fists in seconds. In the chaos, Proof pulled a gun and fired, killing Bender on the spot. Mario Etheridge, Bender's cousin and club security, rushed in and fired a warning shot to stop it. But Proof, still heated, turned and struggled with him. That struggle turned fatal. Etheridge drew and fired 3 close-range shots. Gunfire cracked, screams filled the room, and panic swallowed the club. Proof collapsed instantly, only 32 years old. 2 men dead within moments, Bender first, then Proof. The shockwave ripped through Detroit rap. Authorities ruled it a personal dispute fueled by gambling. Etheridge later received 20 months for illegal firearm possession. Proof's death stands as a brutal reminder. In a fiery, impulsive world, one lost second can end a life and leave scars that never fade. Big L, Harlem glory that ended in a brutal, street-level reckoning. Born Lamont Coleman, Big L was Harlem's crown jewel, razor-sharp punchlines, fearless wordplay, lightning-fast freestyles that left rooms stunned. As a core member of Children of the Corn, he was already being whispered about as the next great before Columbia Records pushed him toward the mainstream. February 15, 1999. Night falls on West 139th Street. Big L sits alone on the stoop at number 45, quiet, ordinary, almost peaceful. Then a car creeps by. The back door cracks open. Gerard Grant, tied to the murder of Big L's brother, Big Lee, steps out, carrying years of buried rage and unfinished street business. A barrage of gunfire erupts, tearing through the silence. Bullets strike head and chest. The block explodes in panic as shots echo and people scatter. Big L is rushed to Mary Immaculate Hospital, but it's too late. Dead at just 24. A rare talent erased at his peak, where fame, old blood debts, and Harlem's unforgiving code collided in a final act of revenge. Grant is arrested in 2002 and sentenced to 20 years. A chilling reminder that in Harlem, shining too bright can still cast a deadly shadow. Mac Dre. A career cut short in a Kansas City street massacre. Mac Dre, born Andre Lewis Hicks, the Vallejo legend, the face of the hi-fi movement. Founder of this entertainment, creator of endless Bay Area anthems. A fearless free spirit who reshaped West Coast rap with swagger, humor, and raw authenticity. October 31, 2004. Halloween night. Fresh off a hyped-up club show in Kansas City, the energy's still high. Just after 3 a.m., November 1st, he's riding in a van on Highway 71, thinking the night is over, thinking he's safe. Then it happens. A white SUV pulls alongside. More than 20 shots erupt, AK-47s and 9mm. Bullets scream through the dark. Glass explodes. Metal twists. Mac Dre is hit and collapses instantly. An ambulance arrives, but it's already too late. Dead at just 34 years old. Authorities point to payback from a long-running feud with Anthony "Fat Tone" Watkins and the CCC crew, years of turf wars and diss tracks boiling over into real bloodshed. 6 months later, Fat Tone is gunned down in Las Vegas. A brutal cycle of revenge. Police would later call it one of the darkest and most violent chains of events in U.S. hip-hop history. Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey Hussle. A life cut short in broad daylight, right in front of the Marathon clothing store, over a personal beef that spiraled into murder. Nipsey Hussle, born Ermias Askedom, was more than a South LA rap star. He was an entrepreneur, a visionary, a man determined to give back. He built Marathon clothing from the ground up, poured money into his neighborhood, and worked relentlessly to pull kids away from gangs and street violence. On the afternoon of March 31, 2019, Nipsey was standing outside his store at Slauson and Crenshaw, talking with friends. Then Eric Holder, someone from the same 60s Crips set, pulled up. What started as casual conversation quickly turned tense. Nipsey quietly confronted Holder about rumors that he had been cooperating with police. The words struck at Holder's pride. Holder walked away. 10 minutes later, he came back, armed. At 3:20 p.m., gunshots shattered the block. 11 bullets struck Nipsey, dropping him instantly. As if the shots weren't enough, Holder kicked him in the head before fleeing the scene. The neighborhood froze. The community was shattered. Nipsey Hussle was dead at 33 years old, killed outside the very store that symbolized his mission, ownership, growth, and peace. His music, his message, and his fight against violence were left behind in blood on the pavement. Holder was arrested 2 days later. In 2023, he was sentenced to 60 years to life. The court ruled it was personal revenge. But to this day, people still struggle to believe that wounded pride and a few reckless words were enough for one man to erase an entire life in minutes. XXXTentacion. XXXTentacion. His death came fast, sparked by old beef and a ruthless robbery. Born Yasse Onfroy, X was a young rapper with explosive sound and a rebellious spirit, gaining millions of fans worldwide almost overnight. June 18, 2018. Outside Riva Motorsports in Deerfield Beach, he stopped to check out motorcycles. Moments later, he climbed into his BMW i8, unaware the calm was about to shatter. A black Dodge Journey suddenly boxed him in. Dedrick Williams and 3 accomplices jumped out, guns raised. Seconds later, more than 10 shots rang out. 8 bullets struck X, dropping him instantly. They grabbed his Louis Vuitton bag holding $50,000 and sped away. X was gone at just 20 years old, his future and talent erased in a brutal instant. Police moved quickly. All 4 suspects were arrested within a month. Investigators uncovered a robbery tied to lingering personal beef. Williams was even a Drake fan with past issues involving X. The killers received life sentences, but XXXTentacion's murder still haunts the rap world and fans across the globe. Pop Smoke. Pop Smoke. Gunned down over a flashed address and deadly gang beef. Pop Smoke. Born Bashar Baraka Jackson. Brooklyn Drill's new king. Welcome to the party, on repeat. From the streets to global takeover, in a matter of months. February 19, 2020. A rented Hollywood Hills mansion. Just chilling. Then one careless moment. A live stream. A gift box. An address tag, fully visible. The Brooklyn Woo Crips saw it as straight disrespect. No warnings. No mercy. For 4 masked intruders. One of them, only 15 years old, climbed the second-floor balcony. They stormed the bedroom. Demanded the jewelry. Pop Smoke fought back. That's when the kid pulled the trigger. 5 shots. Vital areas. Pop Smoke dropped instantly. Rushed to Cedars-Sinai. Never made it. Dead at just 20 years old. Minutes. That's all it took. A peaceful night turned into a hip-hop nightmare. Suspects arrested in 2020 and 2021. The shooter sentenced to 25 years. A brutal lesson in gang retaliation, underground cruelty, and proof that one careless second online can cost everything. Young Dolph was gunned down in broad daylight outside Makeda's Cookies, the final chapter of a long-simmering rap war. Born Adolph Thornton Jr., the Memphis standout built the paper route empire from the ground up, proud of staying independent and never bending in the rap game. On November 17, 2021, Dolph was back home in Memphis, stopping by Makeda's like he always did. But years of bad blood followed him, over 2 decades of diss tracks, and 2 prior murder attempts in 2017, one involving more than 100 shots fired. As he stepped out of the store, a white Mercedes pulled up. Justin Johnson and Cornelius Smith opened fire, unloading more than 20 rounds through the glass. Dolph never had a chance to react. He was hit brutally and pronounced dead at the scene, just 36 years old. Chaos erupted, daylight gunfire, customers and employees screaming and running. Memphis police moved fast. Both shooters were arrested in 2022 and sentenced to life in prison in 2024. Young Dolph's death became the brutal climax of the Memphis rap wars, a grim reminder that in a world driven by money, power, and respect, none of it can ever buy back a life. Takeoff. Gunned down over pocket change. Takeoff, born Kirshnik Kribal, was more than a name, he was a key force behind Migos' global rise. Their chart-topping hits helped define the trap sound and pushed the group to the very top of hip-hop. November 1, 2022. Early morning in Houston. Takeoff was with Quavo and friends, shooting dice at 810 billiards and bowling. What started as a casual game turned tense. Voices rose. An argument broke out over bets. Ego met pride. In the chaos, Patrick Xavier Clark, a local hustler who felt disrespected, pulled out a gun and opened fire. 2 bullets struck Takeoff. He collapsed where he stood. Paramedics rushed in, but there was nothing they could do. He was gone at just 28. Screams filled the room. Panic everywhere. A month later, Clark was arrested. In 2024, he was sentenced to 20 years for second-degree murder, all over a tiny argument, a bruised ego, a few dollars. Takeoff's sudden death is a brutal reminder of how fragile life is in that gambling world. One wrong word, one reckless moment, over pocket change, and everything is over. King Von was gunned down in a chaotic parking lot brawl in Atlanta. Born Davon Daquan Bennett, the O'Block standout tied to the Black Disciples was celebrated for his razor-sharp pen and vivid, street-level storytelling. On November 6, 2020, Von and his crew were outside Monaco Hookah Lounge when they crossed paths with Quando Rondo's Savannah Camp. Tensions flared instantly, hands flying, bodies colliding. While Von fought barehanded, Timothy Leaks, an associate of Rondo, drew a gun and fired, striking Von 3 times in the chest and stomach. Pure chaos followed, screams, people scattering, sirens closing in. Von was rushed to the hospital, but the damage was too severe. He died hours later at just 26. Leaks was arrested at the scene and later sentenced to 20 years for first-degree murder tied to gang retaliation. King Von's death was a brutal reminder of how rap's gang feuds, often born in lyrics, can spill into real life and turn deadly in seconds. MO3, gunned down on a Dallas freeway in a brutal act of revenge fueled by music beef and street turf. Born Melvin Noble, he was a Dallas standout with raw emotion, sharp flows, and a voice that carried real pain, earning him a solid name in Southern rap. On November 11, 2020, MO3 was cruising down I-35E when an Infiniti began tailing him aggressively. Inside was Keywan Cannon White, a longtime North Dallas rival, who suddenly opened fire, unloading more than 15 rounds. Bullets struck the car, sending it spinning before it slammed into a concrete pole. MO3 tried to crawl out and run for his life, but collapsed on the highway, dead at just 28 years old. The violence traced back to diss tracks and territorial grudges. White was arrested in 2021 and later sentenced to life for first-degree murder. A heartbreaking reminder of how online beef can spill into the real world and end a life before anyone sees it coming. Robert Johnson, Robert Johnson was poisoned over a forbidden love that followed him like a curse. He was a legendary bluesman who helped shape the very roots of modern rock music. With razor-sharp guitar work, a ghostly voice, and recordings that still stand as sacred benchmarks of American music, Johnson terrified and inspired musicians across the Delta. His career was brief, but his presence was overwhelming, so powerful that his name alone made rivals uneasy. From his earliest days, he wandered through Mississippi, playing in dusty juke joints and back-alley bars scattered across the Delta. It was there that Johnson became ensnared in a dangerous affair with the wife of a hot-tempered white plantation owner, a woman who saw his raw talent, magnetism, and growing fame as both irresistible and humiliating. Jealousy festered, resentment hardened, and in the unforgiving Jim Crow South, revenge over a woman was never uncommon. In August 1938, inside a rundown tavern in Greenwood, that simmering hatred finally exploded. As Johnson played to a roaring crowd, the plantation owner quietly stepped forward and handed him a bottle of whiskey that appeared harmless. No one knew it was laced with rat poison, strong enough to kill a grown man. Johnson took a long drink mid-performance. Moments later, his body betrayed him. He staggered, convulsed, doubled over in unbearable pain, and collapsed. The agony dragged on for 3 days. There were no real doctors, no proper medicine, no hospital within reach. Robert Johnson died screaming at just 27 years old. His body was buried quickly, without an autopsy, leaving the truth to rot alongside him. Authorities dismissed the death as a jealous lover's crime, but Jim Crow justice ensured the white killer walked free. To this day, Johnson's death remains one of the darkest tragedies in American music history, a once-in-a-generation genius whose brilliance led him to both immortality and a horrifying end. These brutal deaths reveal the deadly shadows lurking behind fame and power. What do you think about the secret feuds that spiral into such horrific outcomes? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next. Join us as we keep digging into the darkness, where glory and danger are forever intertwined.